Hello there guys and welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week I am joined by Ria Carrogan, who's featured numerous times on the various comics and motion shows and is going to be appearing again on the Genuine Chit-Chat feed, so this is a great introduction to her. In addition to that, there is a mild trigger warning on this episode because towards the start Ria opens up and speaks about her struggles with postnatal depression and needing to go to therapy and those sorts of things. I mean, we only tackle that for a short period of time and then the subject matter goes off to many weird and wonderful places. But I want to pre-warn anyone listening to that element. But aside from that, we speak about relationships, we speak about bubble tea, we speak about Jeff Goldblum, we speak about some of the random websites that Ria is a part of, including Ria's Questions, which is fun in itself that you guys will get to experience in this show. So we speak about just a huge variety of things that there's not one specific subject matter that actually we stick to. So it's just one of those ones that goes here, there and everywhere. I had great fun speaking with Ria, and in the show notes, as always, there's just loads of different ways to connect with her. I think Twitter is probably the best way, which is at Ria Carrogan. But as I said, they are in the description, as well as all the other information you'd need to be able to, find her and find out all the other things she's involved with. So just want to add that in here quickly and don't want to ramble on here too much longer. So I present to you Ria Carrogan. Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton. I'm going to be bringing up the fact I've pressed record already. I got rid of the scary woman Zoom voice as well, so I sneakily, I on the odd occasion, early days, I would, if I'm talking to someone, especially if they're in my house or something, I would just be talking with them and then press record and not tell them, and then after like 5-10 minutes, I'm like, by the way, we're recording, and like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said those things. But aside from that, yes, I am here today with Ria. Ria, it's wonderful to have you on the show. We spoke once before, and that was in the joyous Mouse Comics Emotion Book Club number 2. Amazing conversation, wonderful contributions, very, very dark subject matter. Yeah. So this will be a little bit more lighthearted than, Holocaust, so. Which, yeah, we'd hope. There's not many podcasts I think I could do that are any darker than the Holocaust. So with that, man, I want to ask from you, I want to ask you, when did you actually first hear a podcast? That's where we'll start, because I'm always interested at like people's origin stories, in air quotes, for where they ever first heard one. So the floor is yours.
So I guess my first proper understanding of podcasts was, years and years ago, maybe 15 or so years ago, when a wonderful lady I worked with called Jo Bevan at the time, now called Jo Ball. Hopefully it's okay to out her to the world.
Name dropping.
She was an amazing radio producer at a place I used to work. So she would work on sort of putting together adverts and marketing for government agencies and government departments. And I started working with her in internal communications, and she was basically like, I want to do a podcast for you about our staff. So off we pop, we're going to go and do it. So I started learning from her about what podcasts were, what podcasts are, and she introduced me to listening to radio that wasn't music, so talk radio or produced radio. And so it'd always been there in the back of my head that there is an amazing audio adventure out there for me. But it wasn't until, absolute cliche, Serial that I properly started listening to podcasts. I sort of listened to stuff beforehand, like Women's Hour, stuff like that, but sort of on a more sort of ad hoc basis. And then Serial came out, and as with everybody, I just listened to the whole thing. And that opened up podcasts, all different podcasts. I listen to podcasts nearly every day, whenever I can. If I'm leaving the house to go on a 5-minute walk, it's headphones in, podcast in. I listen to all different types of ones. Obviously, I veer towards ones which I know I'm definitely going to be like, so about film, TV, Buffy, all of those sort of things. I've gone off crime podcasts a little bit. I think it's a bit oversaturated. And I think comedy podcasts have gone the same way, and with comedians just interviewing the other same comedians and things like that. So I find that a bit it's not the most fun thing to listen to anymore, because you've listened to it all before. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm one of those annoying people that have you listened to this podcast? And people are just like, we don't listen to as many podcasts. So, oh my God, I've got a podcast recommendation. What recommendation do you have? And they'll be like, my dad wrote a poem. I'm like, yeah, it's great. But everybody listens to my dad wrote a porno. So have you got something else for me? So I just annoy everybody. My husband, Kevin, has a thing where he'll just come up to me and go, podcast. And like, we'll just like walk off or just not say anything else just to mock me. So yeah, I think it's such a fantastic medium, and I love that you can get sort of, there's a different, you get everyday chats with people, you get people who are really into a subject, but you also get sort of fiction podcasts as well. I love that it encapsulates everything, and you can listen to it anywhere, and you can it is for me just a get up and go type thing, or, which blows a lot of people's minds, I can listen to a podcast whilst working. Yeah. And I work in communications, so I do a lot of writing, a lot of thinking about writing, but also like producing imagery and stuff like that. And it really blows people's minds that I can write whilst listening to people talking. Whereas I weirdly can separate those two things. So I can listen to a podcast, although if it's a really good podcast, I end up not doing my work. I always do my work. Any potential and current employers out there.
In years down the line, this comes up in it. They use this podcast. It's like, well, 10 years ago, you said in a podcast that you actually listen to podcasts and don't do work. Well, this isn't going to bode very well for you. Well,
on my CV, send it out to people.
Just put like the link to this podcast on your CV, and that'll be it. Just a full on like Spotify link or something. It's funny with podcasts because I can't listen to podcasts while working. Generally, it kind of depends what I'm doing. I've got like I work in insurance, and so it's like I'm in claims. So there's certain emails you get which are just like, here's an update. The third party's injury reserve has been increased by X amount. Okay, save that to file, increase, blah, move the diary on. So they're the things where I can sometimes listen to a podcast. Normally, if it's a movie podcast or something, and I'm working from home, which I do twice a week, and I can do that sort of thing. But if it's typing out an email and properly and explaining something, I can't do it. And yeah, if it's a really good podcast, I do get distracted. So I'm more of a listening to music person when I work, and then a podcast if I'm doing chores or driving, those sort of things. And obviously we spoke on Discord and stuff. We had the little back and forth about music and whatnot. So is your partner more into music and podcast is like secondary, and you're kind of the opposite?
I mean, he doesn't really have any time for podcasts. He'll pick up one and listen to one for a little bit, but he is all music, and his music, I've talked to you about this, his music taste is across everything. It's madness. I've never met anybody, maybe actually you, who listens to such a diverse range of music. Although at the moment I'm enjoying, let's say, some of it, some death metal. I guess. I don't know what everything's called. He just turns around and tells me. I'll occasionally go like, oh, I like this song. And he's just like, oh yeah, it's this thing, and they do this thing. It's post-death metal rock synthesizers or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
I imagine post-hardcore.
And I'm like, yeah, I love post-hardcore. I'm never going to listen to that again, but thank you. Yeah, he's music. And now I'm only ever really introduced into new music by him, because I don't listen to so if it's the age-old story, right? So the question is, if you could lose your sight or lose your hearing, what would you have? And I would always lose my hearing, because then I can still watch film and TV, I can still read, I can still see pretty pictures, and they're the things that I most connect with. Whereas for him, it'd be like he would go blind so that he could hear music, because that's what he connects with most.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that before. I'd get rid of my hearing in an instant. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
The thing is with me is that although I love podcasting, and podcasting is like my passion and my hobby and things, I could find life in general is so much easier. Like, if you're deaf, it's difficult communicating with people, and there's a degree of safety where you can't hear stuff. But aside from that, you can really live a very normal life, or at least, and it's much easier to live a life without as much assistance. Whereas if you're blind, if you're like proper full on no sight at all, then maybe you don't need constant care if you can take care of yourself, but the adjustment is hugely different. And it's like you can't do certain things anymore. Whereas if you're deaf, you lose a certain aspect of things. But realistically, with most visual mediums that have audio, you can have subtitles. So for me, it's like, oh, I can still watch film, I can still watch TV series, I can still see my loved ones, I can still, do relatively, like, with my job, I wouldn't be able to pick up the phone, but I'd still be able to do emails and data stuff, whereas if I couldn't see, that would just be, like, almost everything. In theory, I could almost do my Star Wars podcast still, if I just looked at the up and beats and things of Audacity. Like, I can I know what an looks like, so I might. Please, if there's a God, please don't test me on this. Potentially, I could do a bit of audio editing, maybe.
I love that you thought you were so lovely about that. You were like, I would still be able to see my loved ones and all of these things. I'm like, boo-hoo-hoo, I can't watch a film.
Yeah, but you've already got your loved ones. This is like, aside from like Megan, there's my Megan and the future. Like, because with me, if I lost my sight now and had kids, I'd never be able to see my children.
Yeah.
Whereas,
God, imagine.
Yeah. So whereas it would still suck you not be able to see your kids grow up, but it's like, at least you're got one child, if you don't mind me asking personal questions. Yeah. So it's like, at least you've seen them, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
So it's kind of...
that must be horrific. I couldn't imagine that. I can't speak for blind people, but her little face is my most favourite face in the whole entire world. And not being able to see that, and at least if I went blind now, this has gone quite dark. At least I'll be able to remember, like, her happy little 3-year-old face.
Yeah, it is, because I've had 2 blind individuals on my podcast. Maxwell Ivy, who went blind, I think, around the age of 17. He wasn't blind at all, and he just got worse. And then there's Goff, who's been on loads of times, Goff of Beer Nuts Productions, and he was, I think he had an injection, I think it was a shot or something for meningitis or something, and it really racked it badly with him. So he lost, like, I think it's something like 80% of sight in one eye and 70 in the other, or something like that. He explained it on one of the podcasts of mine he was on, and it's like he can just about see things like right in front of him, and he wears glasses, and he needed assistance when he was younger to kind of get around, but he can generally do most things, get around by himself, in essence. And he can still watch movies, he just has to, be quite close and things like that. So it's one of those things where it does depend on the level of blindness. It depends where you are in your life if you became blind. But yeah, my biggest fear is losing, like, if I lost my hearing, it'd be awful, but it's like my eyes. I'm so protective. Like, I think I'd rather lose both my arms than my eyes, really. I think I'd probably lose all my limbs over my eyes, if I'm honest. I think
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, because it's just like, there's certain things you can't do. Excluding, being able to have prosthetic limbs and those sorts of things. You can still do, like, I'm a people person, so it's like, I can still talk to people, I can still hang out with people. I can't go on a run, but I could be there when people are walking down the shore or something. But if I haven't got my sight, that's a big thing. But we said we wouldn't talk about dark things, like we're talking about mouse, and we've gone down blindness. So we're pretty quick off the starting line to how dark can this go. Talk about not being able to see.
I can talk about my postnatal depression when I tried to kill myself if you want me to.
Those are always fun conversations. I've had people speak about that on my podcast. I have friends who suffer with those things.
Really?
So it's
cheer us all up.
Oh yeah, it's always good. Suicide, blindness, the Holocaust. What's funnier than that? Nothing. If you see Jimmy Carr live, he does joke about almost all those things, and he is an artist in certain ways. But let's pivot, okay? We can come back to the depression. It's always fun to talk about that. I want to ask actually about one of your websites, or the only website of yours I know of, which is Ria's Questions. So if anyone doesn't know, I'll include a link in the description. It's just riasquestions.com, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Or
God, Kevin's going to kill me.
I always get confused.
Probably .com.
Yeah, I think it would be. And it's literally just your little face with a speech bubble on a question, and then you click your face and the question changes, and it's just like I like it, and I went and it was fun, but what the fuck, where did that come from? Why did you make it? Why does it exist? Like, of all the websites that are kooky in the world, it's pretty up there, let's be honest.
So my other half, Kevin, he makes websites. He's a computer developer, programmer, and he often makes lots of little random websites. He's got one which is about what colour hoodie he is wearing that day. He updates it daily. And people are obsessed with it. So he puts it on his CV or whatever, and he goes to jobs. And it's one of the first things people ask about in interviews. They're absolutely obsessed with it. It's hilarious. No idea why.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. I love it. I'm like, did they ask about the hoodie website? He's like, yeah. And so, yeah, whenever we'd get a new hoodie as well, we'd be like figuring out what colour it is, and he'd upload it. So he does lots of random things like that. And apparently it's been made very obvious to me. I ask a lot of questions. I really like people and I love talking to people and I love listening to people, even though I'm here talking about myself. And I just find myself asking questions and I don't know why, but I'm genuinely interested in people's answers. So like, just before we started doing this, Kevin was playing on his guitar. So he's learned ukulele, he's now learning guitar. And he was doing something and I went, what's that? And he was like, are you actually interested? Of course you're interested. And then I just made him tell me for like 10 minutes what he was doing, because I genuinely just like to listen to people talk. Maybe that's why I like podcasts. And so apparently I asked lots of random questions. And so every time I'd ask a random question, whether it was like to Kevin or like in a friendship group that we have or in like a text conversation, he would just make a little note of it. And then one day I was like, I just made you a little website. It's just all your random questions.
Does it still get updated, or has it just got the pool of questions now?
So he updates it occasionally. So I think he just adds things into notes and then we'll update it when he remembers. I think there's a couple upcoming. I don't know what they are. That's the fun surprise, because he'll upload and be like, I've put a new question and I have to refresh it. And just be like, did I ask that? Oh, great. What was everybody's answers?
It's one of those things. I love asking people questions, but I'm sure you feel like the reason I started my podcast was because the way the sort of elevator pitch for it was, I love it when you ask someone a question about something they're passionate about that they don't get to talk about that often. Yeah. And then you see their eyes light up and they're so excited they can almost not get their words out. And they love, like, I've got my friend Reese, he comes on the show every now and then. He was on my first episode and he was on my 100th episode and a few in between. And he's like super into video games. And I used to be in college and stuff, and then podcasting took over and I don't have time for video games as much, but like he's so passionate about his PC and video games and that sort of stuff, and he knows so much about it. Whenever I hang out with him, I pretty much always just ask about games, so I can have a peripheral knowledge of video games and things, but just seeing how excited he gets about those things as well. Yeah. And so I'm sure you're the same, where you just love seeing people get excited about their own thing.
Yeah, anything. Like, I will listen to anybody talk about anything. If they're excited about it and if they want to talk about it, I will just sit there and listen. I'll endlessly ask questions. Apparently, it's quite annoying. I think it's a wonderful trait.
I think I'm delightful.
I just think people are interesting. People are so interesting. You never know where a conversation's going to go. And I really like that. And I would much rather have a weird conversation, even if I don't know what the fuck somebody's talking about, or even if I'm uncomfortable with it, if somebody wants to talk about it. And actually, weirdly, bringing that back to depression and suicide, when I had postnatal depression undiagnosed for about 6 months, and then I made this like plan to kill myself, and luckily sought help straight away. And obviously Kevin was amazing, and you know, all of this sort of stuff. But for about a week afterwards, I didn't talk to anybody about it apart from Kevin. And it was so strange because I felt really different, because I was like, I'm not openly talking about things. So I always openly talk about things. And I wasn't getting anything back from people either. So the conversations just weren't going anywhere. So I'd be like meeting up with my friends who have kids or going to these parent and baby groups, and nothing was happening. And I was I'd gone to a baby group and I was talking to my friend, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to go home afterwards. And she went, oh, okay. And I just stopped. I was like, you know what? This is what happened to me last week. And I started talking to her about it, and she just sat and listened. And then she started talking about like a few years ago when she wasn't feeling great. And then I started talking to loads of other people, and they were like, oh yeah, there's this time when I had depression, or this time when I tried to kill myself, and I'm saying it in a very blasé way, but actually the conversations were like that. And it was like, so many people feel like this, but don't talk about it, or don't have somebody who's going to sit and listen. You know, my friend, she said, oh God, I feel like that every day. And I was like, okay, you need to go and talk to a doctor. You need to go and see a therapist, whatever you need to do. But I'll just sit here and listen if you want to. And I sat there for like an hour and a half, and she just talked to me. And like, that's not because I'm trying to be like, oh, I will sit and listen or anything like that. It's because I'm actually genuinely interested, and she's telling me something, and I am going to sit and listen. So that's what I mean. Like, even if it's sad things or depressing things or difficult things or things I don't agree with, I will just sit and listen. And I don't know, some people think that's quite rare. I don't, because I think I've got a really good group of people around me who do the same thing. I think we've got really good reciprocal relationships where we support each other and we understand the power of listening. But I do find out from other people that I think that's not a normal thing.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is kind of trust and vulnerability are two big things where sometimes I've noticed, and I've tried to be more receptive as I've gotten older. Like I've got friends, male and female, who have tried to kill themselves. One of my very early relationships, I had to stop the person. They'd OD'd, and I had to go over their house and stop it all. So that was quite a trying time in one of my first relationships, and it's quite to the real world quite fast. So I sympathise with that sort of regard. I personally have not suffered with depression or suicidal thoughts in that realm. I just know a lot of people I'm close to who have. And I think that when you see someone, sometimes they'll start telling you something, and even if it is, depressing or heavy and things like that, some people shy away and want to just change the subject, and are just like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, it makes me uncomfortable. But what I try and do, now I sound like I'm trying to conflate myself, but like when I try, like when you see someone and you can kind of see them somewhat struggling with the words, instead of trying to shy away, I try and gently allow them to speak about those things, because it's like there's a family member of mine recently who was going through issues in their relationship, and they came round and stuff and spoke with me and Megan, and it wasn't, I didn't know about the issues necessarily very much, and then we talked about other stuff, listening to music and chatting, having dinner, whatever, and then they started talking about it, and then it became very apparent that they really needed to talk about that stuff, and maybe they didn't necessarily have other people they could talk about that sort of stuff with. And I think that a lot of people, and this is funny coming from a podcast who has his own interview show, but like a lot of people just wait for someone else to stop speaking so they can talk, as opposed to actually listening, or even knowing when you need to listen just so this other person can get it out and formulate their own feelings. Because like with feelings, I've used this analogy on the podcast before, but I like to think of human brains and thoughts like a lava lamp. And every different thought is like a different colour wax, and it's all kind of this big globbing mess. And when you speak about something, it comes out of the lava lamp, and because you have to turn it into language to be able to convey what you're feeling to someone else, you in turn translate it to the other part of your brain, so you can actually understand how you're feeling. And that's what therapy is, isn't it? It's translating feelings into a language you understand, so you can then actually look at it from a different perspective, rather than going, I've got this horrible mess in my head that I can't figure out. But because you can't talk to anyone about it, or if you're not writing it down, you're not translating it, so it just becomes confusing in a sense. Yeah,
absolutely. I love, and great description of therapy. I love therapy. So I've been to therapy twice. And I just think it's the best thing. I think everybody should go to therapy. But that's exactly what it is. Like, genuinely, because I oh God, I don't really want to be talking about therapy because I'm not a therapy specialist or anything like that. But my personal experience is exactly what you said. So the 2 times I've been, one was I was suffering from a lot of anxiety, on the cusp of depression, which manifested itself in not the best ways. So, for example, I'd walk down the street. This genuinely is what happened. I was walking down the street on my way to work. I used to walk to and from work. And I saw a woman, just a normal woman, walking along with some coffee cups in her hand in one of those little trays. And I had to physically cross the street. Otherwise, I was going to smack it out of her hands for no apparent reason.
Wow.
And I had that thought. I had that intrusive thought, but I was going to act on it. So I was like, okay, I think I'm a bit fucked up. I need to go and talk to somebody. And like rang like the local helpline, NHS helpline. They're like, yeah, come in and have a chat. And what it did, so obviously we explored lots of stuff around that, but a lot of it is, for me, was around like not being able to control some different parts of my life with things that were happening. So it was manifesting itself in different ways. So how do I take myself out of that situation and go, why did I want to knock those coffee cups out of this woman's hand? So glad I didn't. Imagine. Fucking awful, and why did you want to do that? And it's not because I wanted to do that. It's because, like the day before I'd had a difficult conversation. I hadn't been able to process it. And that conversation was on top of this other thing where I'm quite stressed. So take myself out of it and identify those emotions. And how do you then take that emotion from 10 down to a normal emotional level at 5? And doing it the other way, when you're depressed or not wanting to do anything, how do you take that back to a 5, take it up to the middle? And I think that has put me in good stead literally for the rest of my life. I apply everything that I learned. So I did cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and I apply everything I learned in that to now everything in life. I still have to relearn a lot of stuff, and I think that's very important. With everything, we have to relearn. But it's, it'll be like somebody sends me a shitty email at work, and my immediate reaction is to get really angry. But actually, maybe they're having a shitty day, and yeah, they shouldn't be taking it out on me. But what am I helping by being grumpy about it? And can I control the fact they've got a shitty attitude? No. So what do I do about it? And, it's mad for me that it took me 35 years to learn that. And I think that even if you don't feel like you need to go to therapy, and that's totally fine, although everybody should go, I think there are things in there that can make your life easier for you. And that's fuck it. We've only got one life. I don't believe in anything outside of it, any mythical stuff. I've only got one life. I don't want to spend my life being angry, wanting to knock coffee cups out of people's hands. And I don't want to get wound up by little things. I want to sit and have conversations. I want to play computer games. I want to watch film. I want to listen to podcasts. I want to look at art. I want to hang out with my kid. I want to, on Saturday, to pretend to run around and be a dog and pick up a bone for her and shit like that. And she'd throw it for me. So degrading. But, that's what I fucking want to do. I don't want to sit there freaking out about the fact that I said this thing 10 years ago and I can't stop thinking about it. Although I love that for the cringe factor, I love thinking back to things that because I've had therapy, I can look back and go, oh, what a fucking dick you were, and feel fine about it and love the cringe. But I think it puts you in such a healthy mindset for just your life and just getting on with it and not worrying about all these extra things that are going on that you can't control. Doesn't mean you can't sit there and go, the world's burning. You just go, the world's burning, but I don't know, maybe I feel a bit better if I have a cup of water, and go and have your water. God, that's terrible thing. Go have a drink of water.
Well, being dehydrated is actually very, very bad for your health, both mental and physical. So I'm always telling Megan to drink more water. I'm a water fiend. In all my podcasts, people are like, oh, I'm having some wine, or I'm having a bit, and I'm like, water. Like, huzzah, the joys, hydration. That's what it's like. I'm the one who, whenever we're out drinking, I get water, and then I get shit for it. And then the next morning, I'm not hungover, and everyone else is. Like, I went to a wedding on Saturday, and I was making sure I was drinking water. I was drinking Jack Daniels and Coke, vodka and Coke, ciders, chain smoking cigarettes.
What a mix, Jesus.
I know, not all in the same glass, separate drinks, because that would be horrendous. But I can, apart from, I don't like gin, and I can't. I can drink tequila if that's the only thing I'm drinking. But if I drink tequila and I'm already drunk, I'm gone, because I drank far too much on my 21st birthday or something, and it's just fucked me over for life. Aside from that, I can drink basically anything. I can mix all drinks. So I'll just be like, I kind of fancy rum now. I kind of fancy whiskey now. And I like most of it as well. I've been really getting into weird and wonderful things. It's not what the point of the conversation was, but
what did we even start talking about?
It doesn't matter. It's where we are and where we're going. But I was at this wedding, and I was with Megan and lots of my friends and things, and we were all drinking, and we went to this place, and it was a bowling club. So it was dirt cheap. It was a double vodka and Coke was like £3, like a double with a mixer as well. So it was literally like you'd go up, you buy like 5 people drinks, and it would cost less than like 15 quid. And you're like, how is this possible? I don't understand.
That's amazing.
It was great. Everyone was mullered. And I was drunkish, but there was a buffet, so I was eating a lot as well. But we got home at like, because we'd been the wedding thing the whole day. We got home, I think, between 10 and 11. And Megan hadn't been drinking as much water as I had, or eating as much food as I had. And so we got home, and she basically just passed out on the bed. And I was like, no, you need to get out of your wedding clothes. We weren't getting out. The nice dress that you wore all day. You need to wipe the makeup off, and you need to brush your teeth. Like, if you do those things and have some water, you can pass out. But then after that, she passed out. I finished editing my podcast. So I had a whole day of wedding. And then I got in, and the Star Wars podcast that got released with the guys from Star Wars Explained, I was editing that on Saturday night, so that on Sunday, instead of me having to edit podcasts and lose time with Megan, I just stayed up late, finished the editing for that, so me and Megan would have the whole day. And she was really rough. I was fine. I was so okay. I did editing when I got home.
That's so mad.
So yeah, I'm the water drinker. I always get shit for it, always, and I always feel better. I've almost never hungover. And I mix loads of drinks. I'll have shots and people offer them to me.
Yeah, but you're also still young. Just you wait.
I'm not that
I
young.
never used to be hungover.
I'm not that young. I've been hungover. This is the problem.
I used to never be hungover. Sorry.
I used to be. I've had times where I'm really hungover before. When I hit probably 23, that's when I was like, oh, I'm not invincible. Okay, I've got to be more responsible. So it hasn't been the whole time. Once I had one or two horrendous hangovers, I was like, I need to wind it back and start drinking more water. But I was going to ask because I've had friends who've been through CBT and things due to a matter of issues in their life. Is there anything specific that helped you? Like, I know some people, they have journaling. Some people was just talking about stuff. Like, was there any sort of thing that you specifically found was very helpful for you as an individual?
So I think this says a lot about my personality, but I would get homework every week and I would go home and I'd do the homework properly. And so it'd be things like a situation where you felt out of control or upset, or even if, felt too happy or those sort of things, and you'd write it down, and then you'd have to break it down by like, is this a normal, is this an average style reaction or something? I'm not explaining this very well. And go through and write it all down, then you'd have to talk about it. And I found that doing the physical exercise of writing things down, and she would be like, don't do it on your laptop, don't do it whilst you're at work, or if you're doing it at work, do it in your lunch break, take like 5 minutes out to sit and physically write it down on a piece of paper, bring me that piece of paper. I felt that really helped because it was a process and I had to sit and think my thoughts. I wasn't getting distracted by going on Twitter or an email that would come in or anything like that. And by the end of my sessions, I didn't have to write it down anymore because it was all in my head. So I would go in and she'd be like, what happened? I'd be like, oh, there's nothing on the paper. She's like, okay, well, tell me from your head what happened. And so because I didn't have to write it down anymore, I retrained my brain into that process of if I was having an extreme reaction or anything like that, then I could work it out without having to, I could work it out straight away. So I could I'm doing hand motions, which isn't very helpful. I could level out my emotions or my thinking, especially if I was having intrusive thoughts, straight away, or at least identify them. And I genuinely think that's something that saved my life, because when I was having my postnatal depression and when I made this plan to kill myself, and that's literally what I did. Like, I wrote out a note that I was going to send to our friends. I was going to text it to our friends as I took the pills I was going to take whilst my husband and child were in a different room. I wrote it out and I sat there and I'd counted out the pills, and I was something just from that therapy just clicked in my head, and I was like, I need to tell them, because this isn't fitting into the chart that I would write out. And so I went through and I told him, and I genuinely believe training my brain in that way, I don't know if training is the right word, but understanding my emotions, understanding the brain, my thought process and how the brain works, saved my life. And I think that's amazing, and that's why I think therapy is really important, because that's obviously really extreme, but on just sort of the smaller scale, I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by things, even if you're mentally really healthy. And I don't know if that's the right term, we as individuals have so much pressures in our lives, whether you're a child, whether you're a teenager in your 20s, 30s, 60s, 70s, wanting to retire, there's always some sort of outside pressure. And it's really important to notice them and protect yourself from them, or at least go through the process of working through them. And I think that would just make everybody a lot happier and everybody a lot nicer to each other. The older I've got, all I want really is for people just to be nice. Like, I'm so fed up of all this bullshit that's going on in the world where we're just being horrible to each other all the time. And I think that, again, the reason I want people to just sort of be nice and understanding and be in each other's shoes and not be snapping at each other. And, I do all these things because I'm a human being. But, I think just going and having a simple bit of therapy helps with all of that, genuinely.
Yeah, well, the thing is, no one's ever taught how to live life. We're in school, you're taught how to do 70% of nonsense that's not really very helpful for anyone. And then 30% is just vaguely functioning in the world, mainly using language, written language, and simple maths. Like, aside from those general basics, there's no, I think the curriculum is slowly getting better. There's still a long way to go, because, Megan's a teacher and things, and I've got friends who are either in teaching or involved in some ways. And so, no, I know, obviously, Jack is as well and things. So it's one of those elements where there are certain classes which are like health and social care, where they're trying to get into the minutiae of mental illness and stuff, but it's still not quite enough. Like, when I was when I was 19, I started writing a book before I did podcasting, because obviously when you're 19, you know everything. So when I was 19, I thought, what we need is a guide to life, in a sense. I think it was after my dad passed away. It was when he was terminally ill. So it was around that sort of time, me trying to cope with it in some way. And I was thinking, people need some guide, even if I don't have the answers. And so I did start writing pages on a Word document somewhere, but I abandoned that and did a podcast instead. But it's one of those things where it's just like, you're never told how to do stuff until... Humans are very good at not acknowledging a problem until something majorly bad happens. And a really good example for this is speed cameras in the UK. They don't put speed cameras in places until after there's a really bad accident.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, wow, that bend there looks quite dangerous. Should we put something there to prevent anything bad happening? Like, no, we've only got a certain amount of money. We'll store something there if something bad happens. And it's kind of like that in certain ways where, like, I think from what I'm interpreting from you is like, maybe people should go to therapy before there's an incident rather than waiting to an incident and then going to therapy to almost repair the damage caused. If you went beforehand, you could have mitigated this incident to have something that's not quite as serious.
Absolutely, yes. Well done. You said that very succinctly. No offence for you, compared to my rambling.
Yeah, well, it's normally when people speak about things, I generally try and... In my mind, I normally have to say back either a metaphor or an interpretation, just how I translate things. Like, I'll hear 1,000 words, and I've got a fairly good memory, but the way I describe my memory is it's like an atrium full of Post-it notes. There's just everywhere. There's a section of Star Wars, and the Post-it notes just come out of the wall by like meters and meters and meters. But every little subject about anything, and every person has got their own little Post-it note. And some people have got more Post-it notes or less, and it's just... And I say an atrium, that's probably, smaller than it maybe is in my own brain, but there's just giant area of Post-it notes. So I'm just like, how would I get everything that this person is saying onto almost like a tweet? Although I don't like Twitter, to be honest with you.
You need to work in comms, honestly. I think you've cracked communications. Like people, so in my work, people send me this random shit. So they'll be like, oh, I've worked on this thing. It's a new process of doing stuff. And they'll either send you nothing, or they'll send you like this 50-page document that you've like never seen before and be like, oh, can you just do a press release? And you're like, what the fuck is this? And you have to sit and you have to read it and you highlight it. And like my biggest test of comms is if I, as a comms professional, can't understand what it's saying, then the people we're communicating out to won't be able to understand it either. And like mostly you do want a Post-it note. You want something to fit on Post-it note because that's all people read. I mean, I'm terrible for it as well. I read The Guardian, and I go on there and I'll read the ones that take my interest, but I won't read the whole article because we know people don't. And like that's why I structure press releases in the way I structure press releases, because people don't read to the end of the press release. It's the bit that nobody gives a shit about and put at the end. And usually you put all the important information first. And I think you've just cracked it. So basically now at work tomorrow, somebody's going to ask me to do something and I'm just going to be like, right, what can I get on a Post-it note? That's what I'm going to do. Wonderful.
Well, there you go. I've revolutionised the communication industry. One podcast at a time. I knew the guide to life. That's it. I say the thing is that my brain does things as a Post-it note, but when I verbalise things, they do not come out that way. They come in a stream of verbally waterboarding people, because a lot of the time it's because I'm trying to get my point across while trying to make sure they don't misinterpret what I'm saying before I get to the end of the sentence, while simultaneously thinking normally about two other things, and often one of those things is the next thing I'm going to be talking about. So it's normally kind of like a static buzz in my brain a lot of the time, so which is why I normally ramble and stuff as well. And, I never want people to misinterpret what I say. And when people don't interrupt me, like I'm used to being interrupted a lot by my friends, sometimes necessarily it needs to happen. But like sometimes it used to happen in relationships a lot more, and it happens a little bit now, but it was like I'll start a sentence and someone will cut me off halfway through the sentence to argue with me when the second half of the sentence completely changes the meaning of what I'm saying. So I'll say something and then someone will argue with me on a point and I'm like, that's not the point I'm making. And then I have to argue against something that I'm not even about a point I'm not making. And that's kind of given me a little bit of a complex of being like, okay, if I start the thing with 5 minutes of preamble clarifying I'm not saying this thing before I say the thing, then it won't be misinterpreted. But then people interrupt me before I even get to anything. So it's not perfect. Just like I did then.
So I once had a conversation very similar about that, about porn. So porn in general, I don't think is a bad thing. However, I think the way that porn is at the moment and how women are represented in porn and how women are treated in porn is very, very bad. And I think it's a dangerous precedent for young people coming in who are being introduced to sex via porn. And I think it means young men and young women think there are certain ways to act when you are having sex. And therefore, I don't think porn should be banned, but I think we should have better sex education in the UK to teach young people and older people what healthy sexual relationships look like.
Yeah.
And so this is this was years and years ago, obviously massively drunk, trying to talk about it. And so my friend turned around and said, "You sound like a massive Tory." Now, if you want to piss me off, call me a fucking Tory, because look, I have some friends who are, I would say, Tories, but in the middle, and that's fine. We're not going to politically agree on these things, but overall, you're decent people. You're not fucking scumbags. God. I'm going to get myself in lots of trouble now. And so I immediately was on the defensive and so then doubled down without getting my proper point across, and then had to circle back. But this is 45 minutes later to circling back saying, I don't think porn is bad, because fundamentally I don't. I think people should be allowed to enjoy sexual things. But by the time we got back round, all of that had got lost. So all we took away from the conversation was I was angry that somebody had called me a Tory or that I was censoring people. And all my friend got away from the conversation was that I think porn is bad. And I was like, we both fundamentally don't think those things, but because I was interrupted halfway through and the other person wasn't listening, and then in turn I stopped listening. I mean, we ended up in a wine bar having a really loud conversation. Argument about porn and saying porn's bad. And it's I think we as people are too quick to jump in and say, it's exactly looping back to what you were saying, is it's that not listening. We're too busy waiting for our turn to speak than to listen. And therefore, and that's the biggest problem with social media at the moment, right? Nobody's listening. Everybody's just shouting into a void, and everybody just wants to be heard because they've given a platform to be heard, and nobody's stopping and listening, and therefore none of us can get on. That's why there's such a big divide. This is not some massive political revelation. I know that. I know lots of people are talking about this. So book me for your TED Talks. But weirdly, I'm going to loop it around to something else. That is why I think finding safe spaces on social media or with your friends to talk about things is really important. So, for example, when I started being part of the Comics in Motion family, I was really, really nervous about being back online. I'd gone offline for quite a long time because a couple of friends who I was close with had been harassed online and stuff like that. And I'm quite outspoken about feminism and equality and intersectionality and all of these sort of things. And I think it's all really important. And I was like, I'm just not going to expose myself to that because I don't have the capacity. I want to enjoy life. And it's really scary coming back on and sharing Jack's reviews and his podcast. I mean, although I did that because I'm so incredibly proud of him that I'm just yes, I want to share it all. But, at the same time, do I need to protect myself? But actually, being more involved in it and being in the chats with all of you guys, I actually feel quite protected because I feel like Comics in Motion is a really safe space because it's really good people. Genuinely, it's so mad. I feel like since January when Jack started doing it all, my brother started doing it all, I feel like I've just found this amazing group of people. And even though I've never met any of you in real life or actually spoken to any of you properly, I feel like you're my friends and I feel like I'm really safe. And I feel like you're all really special. And that's transformed social media for me. So it's you guys, and also the podcast Buffering Vampire Slayer, which is just amazing. They have an amazing community around them. And they're the sole reason I'm still on Facebook. Well, that and for restaurant recommendations in my local area. But because they're so supportive and I've learned so much from them, and you can come along with a question about something that might be considered, a tricky conversation, and they treat you with kindness and they treat you with respect, but they expect you to go off and do learning. So there's lots of conversations about race and gender and all of those sort of things, and people provide you with that information, but you as an individual, it's on the onus on you to do that learning. It's not for them to teach you. And I've never met two communities like that online at all, and I think that's so special. And I can't remember what my original point was, but there you go. Buffy and the Vampire Slayer community and Comics in Motion, fucking special people.
Well, thank you, because I'm obviously a part of one of those communities.
Apart from you, because remember, you are mediocre.
That is true. I am a mediocre man, so I can only fall upwards. I'm gonna have that on a t-shirt. Quoted Ria.
Oh, should we make some t-shirts?
I've been
fun.
thinking about making t-shirts for Genuine Chit-Chat for since probably I started, which is 4 and a bit years ago now. I've got the graphic design savvy. It's more just trying to. You can either do one of two things. You can either do it where you get a company who prints on demand, but it costs like 25-30 plus pound per t-shirt, and you can't always confirm the quality. And it also, because half my listeners are in the UK and half are in the US, or more so, 40% are in each of those places, and the other 20% are ethereal around the world. It's like, well, you have to really have 2 distribution places, or you can print off, 100 Genuine Chit-Chat t-shirts for, probably about $1,000, and then sell them for less, but you have to sell like 30 or 40 to be able to make your money back. And so I'm just like, because of these hurdles, I'm just like, I'll do it at some point. And it keeps not happening. And COVID kind of gave me the excuse to not do it, because everyone's podcast numbers just dropped hugely. So I was like, oh, my numbers are getting up there. Maybe I should do some merch. Oh, no. Okay, cool. I don't have to worry about that for a little while. Sweet. With the community thing, I mean, I obviously, when I was me and Tony, I think, were 2 of the first people. Me, Tony, and Max, I think, were the first people to get in on the Comics in Motion thing. I can't remember when Discord started. I think we were all in the Twitter chat initially, and it was a mess, because it was like, it was just one person say, can we share this thing? Yeah. Oh, this thing's really cool. And then eventually, after 5 minutes, it's gone forever. So I think Dave, if I'm giving the credit to the wrong person, I'm sorry, but I think it was Dave, it might have been Tony, who said, why don't we do a Discord? And so the Discord got started, and it's amazing. Like, especially through lockdown and stuff, it was really cool. And I think one of the best things about all the guys in Comics in Motion is that we know when to joke and banter and give each other shit in the right ways. I'm the Star Wars guy, so I always get shit about Star Wars, and that's fine, because they know that I'm okay with that. But although I would be fine with this, no one's making like dead dad jokes. It's because they're respectful, and they try to get to know each other as individuals and kind of know where the lines are in certain ways. But that's why, Comics on Trial got started, was because it was like, not enough people in nerd cultural fandoms are being able to have arguments that remain civil. Plenty of us disagree on loads of things. I disagree with all my best friends on almost everything, aside from how you treat people generally. But it's like, most of my friends, a lot of them are not fussed about Star Wars at all. They don't give a fuck. So they're wrong, but
fine. You like what you like.
Yeah,
fine.
You like what you like. I can't tell you you're wrong. I think you are, quietly to myself, but but with it's one of those things where even if we have debates about music or movies or anything like that, it's still one of those things where if you are still respectful, you have to have the 2 kind of sides to it. You have to be respectful as a person and not do like personal attacks. Don't call someone, a fucking moron if they do or do not like something, unless you're obviously really doing it in jest, and they have to know that. But on the same side, you have to also know that when you're speaking to another person about these things, you have to know that they're not taking it to heart. And I think people, especially when politics get involved, especially religious beliefs and things, which I'm an atheist or an agnostic, depending on what day you get me on, but I don't believe in a god or deity or anything. But because of that, a lot of my beliefs aren't intertwined with my personality or my being. And because of that, it means that if someone does critique Star Wars or movies or something like that, I don't take it personally. Yeah. But some people find it, and there's certain things that are closer to home than others, but some people can't differentiate for themselves between something they like and a belief that they hold and is a part of them as a being. So if you criticize them about anything that they hold dear, they feel you're personally attacking them when you're not. But then they get all defensive, and then you're like, I wasn't doing that. You're an idiot for thinking that. And then you're then inadvertently on the attack. They're on the defense, and it becomes a mess, really. So I think the guys in Comics in Motion, and you fit in perfectly well with this, are just be respectful, know the lines in a sense, and just know that even if someone disagrees, they're not attacking your character.
Yeah, totally. It's the intent, isn't it? And I think intent's really important. I learned that from Kat and Moran. We went to an event that she did, and she was talking about many things, but when you're saying something, it's all about what's behind it and what you're intending to get across. And sometimes that might go wrong, and that's okay. But if somebody tells you that they've taken offense to it or you've said it wrong, you have to be humble enough to go, okay, I'm sorry, learning experience, let's move on. But you're also allowed to say that wasn't my intention, and not in a I refuse to apologize type of way, but as in that wasn't my intention, but what I'm going to reflect on what you've said, and next time I talk about it, I'll talk about it differently. Or if just somebody says that upsets me, you just go, I'm sorry that upset you, I won't do it again. It's not that fucking hard. It really isn't. Well, that's not true, because if you'd said that to me in my early 20s, where I was very annoying and loud and I held very strong beliefs in things, and I still do that, I would immediately go on the defensive. But the biggest thing that I've learned, and actually Kevin says I've taught him about, is that it's okay to be wrong. And if somebody says they don't like it, that's okay. It's not a personal attack back on you. And it's really hard to not think that it is. It's really hard to not take it personally. And I still slip and do it sometimes, but mostly, nobody's actually really thinking about you, the other person. They're thinking about themselves. And that's really important to remember as well. Like, we're all just human beings, aren't we? We all got flaws. We all get silly about things. Like, I'm trying to think of something that I get wound up about. I don't know, I probably get wound up about loads of things.
Being called a Tory?
Oh yeah, fuck that shit. Fucking Tories. Anyway. Oh God, I'm like, I found a really safe space online now. This is when it goes bad. I will just block people, which I've never had to do. I have to do that at work, and it's very satisfying blocking people.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the work stuff because it's very complicated, but there are times when it is like, you are just trash, and I don't have time for it. So I have tolerance up to a level, and I'll just be like, just fuck off. I've got no time for it.
Yeah, well, there's points with certain individuals you meet in your life. When I think everyone goes through phases. When you're in your teen years, you think you know everything. When in reality, you actually know nothing. I describe it in the metaphor of when you're a child, you're in front of this big door that all the adults can go in and out of, but you can't, and you can't figure out why. And you get older and older, and eventually, when you're sort of a teenager, you can look through the keyhole. And because you look through the keyhole into this room, you think you know everything that's in there because you studied the view you get from the keyhole is only a small amount, but you think, I've seen all that. I know everything there is. And then when you kind of get to sort of your 20s-ish, a lot of the time I find when you're either in adult relationships and often you move out and have have a job that maybe isn't specifically in education, as in not being at university and having just a job, like having a full-time job is the word I was looking for. When that happens, the door opens, you take one step in the room, and then the room realistically is like the size of the biggest castle you've ever been in your life. And every square inch of the entire of your vision is something completely different and new. And you're looking around it and you're like, oh fuck, no, I know nothing. And when the more you look around and you pick up like an object and you look at it, this is really cool. And then you look up and it's been 4 years and you look around and think, there is no way I would even have time to look at the things in my immediate vicinity to know everything about them.
Yeah.
And I think as a human, that's kind of what happens. And when you're a teenager, you're looking through that keyhole thinking, I know everything in that room. I've seen it, been staring at that same area for ages because you've got such a narrow experience in life. And so I think that as you get older, because of that, your perspective changes. And people go through amounts of being cynics and stuff and being, pessimistic or optimistic and that sort of thing. And I've had ups and downs with all that sort of mindset and whatnot. But I think when you meet certain people, there's certain times in one's life where you think, you give someone a bit too much credit and you think they're not that bad of a person. They're fine, this. And then it turns out they're a bit of a dick or they're a horrible person. And then it kind of takes you back. And then generally for a little while, you're a bit more, no, everyone's kind of bad. Everyone's got their own agenda. And it just kind of takes a while to realize that most people are worth a chance, and a lot of people are worth a second chance. But there are some people you will just come into contact with who are just toxic, horrible people, and there is no amount of reason, talking, and sometimes not even an amount of niceness that can change that. That doesn't mean one shouldn't be reasonable. It doesn't mean one shouldn't be nice to other people, but it does take a certain period of time before you realise you can be as nice as you want to this person. They are not going to change, and you unfortunately just have to deal with the fact that you can't always change and save everyone. And that's a lesson that I had to find in the hard way, really.
Yeah. I think your friend Tonya talked about that in something I listened to her about. There's some people who are givers and some people who are takers, but she said it in a much more eloquent way because she's incredibly eloquent in everything that she talks about. I did Comics in Motion, Indie Comic Spotlight with Tony on Monday, and we were talking about Tonya. So I was like, before I came here, I was listening to her podcast. It's like, I'm going to really channel her because she's so good with her words. She's very economical and she lets silence sit there and she says things. She doesn't use too many words. Like, I'm going to be just like her. And of course, I fucking wasn't at all, because she's incredibly skilled in the way she comes across and presents her. Plus, she's got a wonderful voice, so that helps. Whereas, I just like ramble on and on and on. I did the same thing before this. I was like, remember Tonya, come on, you can do it. You don't know what you're talking about, but just you talk slowly, take deep breaths, really get your point across, which I haven't been doing at all. And now I've actually forgotten what I was talking about. It's just become a Tonya appreciation rant.
I mean, that's good.
What was I talking about?
You were saying about I said about like you can't save everyone in essence.
Oh yes. So she she said it incredibly well. It was something about like people are succubuses or whatever and take things away, and you basically just have to cut them off because they don't. God, she said it so much better than this. Is awful. Oh, I'm so sorry, Tonya. I'm going to do a podcast with her and she can explain it better. But yeah, basically there becomes a limit where you don't have the energy to give. These people have taken too much of your energy, and therefore you cannot look after yourself and center yourself or the people who actually deserve your time around you. Mm-hmm. And so you've just got to get rid of them. And again, she said it better than that, but I think that's true as well. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I actually think that's okay, because you can have amazing relationships and friendships throughout your life for a short period of time. And I think that's okay. If a relationship or friendship's not working for you, for either of you, I think it's okay for you to not have that relationship or friendship anymore. And I've had people do that to me, and especially when I was younger, it really hurt. But now I'm like, that's fine. I'm really pleased I was there for a period in their life where we enjoyed each other's company and we supported each other and helped each other. But if they don't need me anymore, that's absolutely fine, because we all move on, we all change, we make new friendships, we find new groups, we find new interests. And I think that's actually a wonderful thing about being human, that you can have these amazing people for long or short periods of time, and they enhance your life. And it's when you don't, exactly like when we talked about mental health, you don't want to get it to the stage where it's the worst. Mm-hmm. Get rid of it before then, and then you just got all the lovely good memories. Yeah.
It's like you can't be the co-star in someone else's life movie all the time. You just can't. You can be a guest star, you can be, a reoccurring character, but realistically, a lot of the time, with almost all great stories, not every character is in every great story all the time. In fact, a lot of the time, a lot of fan favourites and a lot of the best characters and stuff are not on screen the most.
Yeah, totally.
And it doesn't, characters or people can have a huge amount of impact on your life without having that much, in air quotes, screen time. I've had people, like Tony's probably quite a good example of all. Obviously, in Comics in Motion, I got along with everyone, and I'm not going to specifically say in an order of how many, because I was about to, and I was like, wait, that would be very mean.
Rank them.
I'm not doing that. Everyone is delightful, and I love them all. But with Tony, aside from Chris and Dave, who I clicked with early on in the podcasting career like I make money. Early on, Tony and I clicked, and he was there's about 5 or 6 podcasts I collected with within the first year or so. But I think I had the least amount of communication with Tony, because normally when we would talk, it would just be, we'd podcast, we'd record about an hour or so, but we'd be talking for like 2 hours or whatever, before and after, whatever. But like, he had one of the biggest impacts on me as a podcaster than almost anyone, even though if you looked at like a statistical pie chart of people who had interactions with me inside or outside of podcasting and all that, the slice of the pie would be incredibly small, but the impact that he had is massive. And time and quantity doesn't mean, or quantity isn't quality. It's very, very simple. You can have people who are in your life for like 20 years and they're all right as a mate, but they don't add anything to you as a person. Whereas you can have other people who you meet on a holiday and you spend like 2 weeks with them and then you never see them again. And that experience with them could have changed you as a person dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
The joys. Well, we're now at the hour mark. We can pivot because we've got enough time to do more conversations. Huzzah. Well, I wanted to talk to you about women's representation, tokenism, and all that stuff, but I think we're going to have to save that for another podcast.
I think we might have to,
because
as well.
That sounds to me, because we managed to talk about.
I have a lot to say about it.
Yes, exactly, and maybe we'll see if we can rope Tonya on, and then you can, because have you?
I'd love that.
Were you on a season's greeting with Tonya, or have you guys missed?
No,
you haven't.
No, so we've missed each other. But there's something I want to do with Comics in Motion, and I've already lined her up to do it with me because I'm desperate to have a proper chat with her. And I just hear her voice. I think, my God, have I got a crush on Tonya?
I think.
Now that I'm talking about it,
I think anyone who doesn't, there's something wrong with them. To be honest with you, let's be honest here. She is fantastic in every way. But same as Tony and Tonya, and they're almost, their first names are almost the same, aren't they? So it's like, and they're two of the best people, not only in podcasting but in the world. So if, regardless of your sexuality, if you don't have a crush on both Tonya Todd and Tanya Farina, I don't even want to talk to you. Let's be honest here. But so let's instead of talking about that sort of stuff, because we can figure out another time to do women representation. We can either have Tonya on with us, or we can have part 1 without, part 2 with. Who knows?
Or Megan.
Well, yeah, I did think about Megan.
I know she's got opinions on it, and
yes,
I want to know them.
Yeah,
but only if she's in her lovely red dress from the wedding.
Okay, I'll have to, because you saw that in the Discord thing. Did you see? Yeah. I think if I told her that, she would do that, and then she would stress about it because she'd get so sweaty, and she'd be in this dress, be like, I'm trying to be nice.
Like, why the hell am I in this dress?
Yeah, I have to wear the lipstick and do makeup. But I'll make sure, because I almost asked Megan about being on this podcast, but I thought what I find a lot of the time with guests such as you or Tony or Tonya, people I know that I'm going to be able to talk forever with about anything, I'm like, well, let's have an introductory podcast where we can kind of get the randomness and the kind of getting to know someone and the minutiae of things that's just a mess in a really good way, but like get all that out kind of in one nice big intro conversation, and it's a good introduction for the listeners who don't maybe know who you are, and then after that it can be more targeted, because that's what I did with Tonya. Like the first podcast she was on, we were talking about stuff, we talked about representation a little bit, but she really wanted to talk about superhero movies and things, but not in a case of just representation, just in about being a nerd, but because we were focusing more on the representation stuff, and we'd only each siphoned off like an hour, it was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I think Tonya's the quickest returning guest I've ever had on, because I think she was on 2 or 3 episodes later. Might have been 2. I think she was on like episode 99 and 101 or something, or 98 and 102 or something like that. And we literally recorded like 2 weeks after the first recording, because we clicked really well, and we were like, okay, now let's set this podcast aside to do this and that. So we'll be able to organise something. And with Megan, I was like, I'll bring Megan on. I genuinely did think about the women representation, but I thought,
let's do it.
Let's get that. But
let's get that done.
We've still got some time, and I've still got some notes. And also, talk about notes. Look at this handwritten stuff. My I don't know if I've shown people in Discord. I think it was a while ago. Here are my notes. This gives people heart attacks. Here's my notes for Star Wars comics in canon. So look at the tiny little writing.
That's really stressful. I don't like.
And look, there's different colours, so that's my annotations.
Like
I know, no one does. It's awful. It's pages and pages and pages of it. It's just awful.
How do you write so small?
Well, my handwriting is atrocious, so it works that it's illegible at the best of times. So if it's illegible and tiny, the thing is, a lot of it is almost like doctor's writing sometimes, where, because I know it's about Star Wars, and I read the comic normally once, and then I reread it, and then everything I recognise, I make a note of, and then that's why there's certain different colours and things, because I annotate it, and then I'm like, oh, this guy, he looks familiar. I think I saw him in Empire Strikes Back. I'm pretty sure his name is Veers or something. Oh, let's look it up. Oh, it is Commander Veers. Okay, and then you find him on like Wikipedia or one of the reference books I've got, and then you look at the information you kind of want to use, and then I make a note of that at the bottom. But a lot of it is just more jumping off points in a sense. So instead of like, I don't necessarily write all the information here. A lot of it is just notes of just like, oh, Luke's in the X-Wing. Well, I remember when Luke was in the X-Wing, he did this and this. So it's kind of more jumping off points. That wasn't the reason. That wasn't the... Anyone who's listening to audio is like, what the fuck? Why did you get notes? Going on? Jesus Christ. No, I want to pick up some of the questions from your website because I think I said before recording, I might have said at the start of the recording, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but it was one of the easiest conversations to prep for because A, I knew we'd be able to chat about anything anyway, but B, when you've got a website which is just filled with random questions you've asked, it's quite easy just to be like, I don't need to think at all about the conversation. I can just write fun ones. So one of them I literally wrote, it was, what is your favourite type of ice?
Yes.
And I just wrote,
type of ice.
And I wrote but next to it, what the fuck? How... Do you mean like vanilla ice, that as in the wrapper, or do you mean
ice, baby? No, I mean ice. The ice.
What, as in
like
you
ice that you have in drinks, or well, I mean, is slush your favourite?
I don't think slush is anyone's favourite.
Is crushed ice. Crushed ice is the best ice.
But isn't it dependent on what you have it with? Like an iced coffee, I want crushed ice. But if it's like if it's like a cold alcoholic drink, I want ice cubes. But
this is why the question's so good. Because what is your favourite kind of ice? Because, right, so if I'm like going to have a slushy, sure, I want crushed ice, maybe slushy ice. Maybe a mixture of the two. If I'm going to have a gin, I want like a slow melting ice cube, don't I? Because I don't want it to infect all the gin with its non-alcoholicness. You know, like, it's so important. Ice is important. Would you have a... Your face is amazing. So I've always wanted one of those freezers where it has like the ice crusher and ice cubes and stuff like that. But then I went to stay in an Airbnb and I learned that you have to really look after it, otherwise they break, so I don't want them anymore. So I guess my ultimate fancy would be just having a person who provides me with ice just every day.
The ice Inuit.
Like, yeah. Well, yeah. Like, wouldn't that be... Because I like really cold drinks.
Yeah.
So ice is really important to me.
Right, I see. The question was more so, I only can really think of like 3 types of ice. So asking...
Okay, what 3 types of ice can you think of?
Well, crushed, slush, and cubed. Aside, like, what else can you fit in a drink? Like, aside from like a slab. So there's 4, isn't there? Or 5.
But wouldn't it be cool
slab,
if you had
shard...
like a big slab and like crushed it up and then put it in?
But where would you keep it? What would you use it for? The questions are... I'm just... The question is more interesting to me than the answer. The question is, how do you come about asking someone what their favourite ice is when there's only like 5? It's not like what's your favourite Beetle and there's reasoning behind it. It's more just, what am I drinking at the time depends on what I want. If it's a slushy or an iced coffee, probably crushed ice. If it's alcoholic, as you say, you probably want an ice cube. If it's, to have my enemies slip up on, it's probably a slab. Like what?
Excellent.
To stab someone,
black
shad.
Ice, some lovely black ice.
No one likes black ice. Black ice is evil.
Yeah, no, but if you want somebody to slip up on it, if you want to do the cliched ultimate murder weapon, it's an icicle. Right? See, how long have we just been talking about ice?
Too long is the answer to that question.
It's great. It's great. Do you like bubble tea?
I am very neutral to bubble tea.
Well, I love bubble tea. And now bubble tea, right? You get a choice of ice. You get no ice, you get warm, you get slight ice, you get medium ice, you get full ice, right? It depends on what type of bubble tea you're having, of what type of ice you have.
Yes.
Ice is important.
Yeah, but you didn't ask what's the best ice for a certain occasion. You just vaguely asked what's
your favourite type of ice.
It's like,
in general, my favourite type of ice is crushed ice.
I think that's generally the best, in my opinion as well. But it's like saying what's the best drink without any context. It's like, but for what purpose? To get drunk? To wake myself up? Just for general hydration? For taste? For mouthfeel? For how quick I can drink it? Like, there's more criteria.
See, this is what I like, because I like listening to people and listen to how passionately you're talking about ice and different types of drinks.
You haven't listened enough to my podcast. I get passionate about everything. That's my problem. My mates always question. They said if they could wish for anything in the world, it would be either an off switch or like a dimmer switch for me. So when I'm at like 100, like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like let's just wind it down, Mike. Let's put you down to, you're at an 8 now. Let's go down to a 3. Yeah. Because most of my friends are introverts as well, so they don't want me being loud and excitable, so I just double down. No, but I I want to clarify to any listeners. I know you can probably read between the lines. I am joking, and I think this question is genius and hilarious. I'm playing up to the fact of how ridiculous it is because it's funny and enjoyable to play around with.
I do not believe in that intent, and I am offended.
I'll say my opinion on bubble tea is I get the concept, but the way I describe it is like the skin of the bubbles is like baked bean skin. So,
okay.
Which in a I love baked beans.
Do not have enough time for this. I do not have enough time for this. But that depends what bubbles you're getting. So are you getting tapioca pearls, which don't have weird skins? Tapioca pearls are like fucking heaven. Or are you getting like the weird little fruity popping balls? Again, this is not a bubble tea appreciation podcast.
That's an idea.
Definitely do that for an hour. Yeah.
Comics right there. Comics in motion bubble tea hour. Sweet.
I'll go pitch it. So bubble tea. So you get the tapioca pearls, you get little fruity pearls, you get jelly, you get pudding. Oh, like dirty little custard pudding. Oh, with some matcha. Fucking amazing.
You would get on with Megan a lot because that soundbite for 15 seconds is how Megan describes almost everything she enjoys. She just gets so passionate, but also quite like visceral, like animalistic. Like, yeah, I just fucking love cheese. All right, it's like that. It's like, whoa. I mean, cheese is sick. Let's be honest.
Cheese is fucking amazing.
I've only had bubble tea like twice.
I mean, and the other important thing is where you get it from. So I've moved out of London now. I now live in Milton Keynes, and the bubble tea here is probably more depressing having it than not having bubble tea.
Well, I'm from Southampton, so we do have quite a rich culture of different people. So I think there's like 3 or 4 bubble tea places. There's also markets that open up and they have bubble tea as well, it seems. I know bubble tea is quite an in thing at the moment, so cool. Maybe I'll give bubble tea another go. Megan hated it, but she likes a lot of things. Like she likes healthier food than me, but I like more crazy and adventurous things. But she's quite like with chocolate. A good example of how Megan likes things. Like she likes every type of cheese apart from I think cream cheese. But like with chocolate, she doesn't like orange, mint, dark. Doesn't really like white chocolate. She loves chocolate. It's not one of her favorite things. But she only likes chocolate or caramel chocolate. She likes like Oreo chocolate, maybe dime chocolate. Like if it's normal chocolate with stuff in it, that's fine. But if it's flavored chocolate, she's not like that. Whereas I'm like, give me dark, give me white, give me all of it. I'll just fucking
mint
eat
chocolate is my favorite. It's one of my all-time favorite flavors.
Yeah, my mum's like that. Generally, you find people they are very strong of their opinions of mint chocolate. Whereas I'm just like, I'll eat it if it's there. Will I choose it? Rarely. Will I eat it? Always. That's how you got to be with everything.
Have you had Tony's Chocolonely?
Oh, I love Tony's.
Oh my god, it's so fucking.
Although they're
bars. Been to Amsterdam and been to the shop.
Ever been to where? Sorry,
God. Amsterdam.
Yeah, but that's where I first had it. Blazed out of my gourd, and we were like, "Why is all this bright coloured chocolate?" And we bought it. But the thing, when you're stoned at your melon and you're trying to figure out how to break this chocolate in half, and none of the pieces are in the right shape. I mean, sober me in England now, breaking chocolate. I'm like, I still, me and Megan get a bar of it, and we're like, how are we going to work this out? We have to break it into 4s. You have the bigger quarter and the smallest quarter, and then I have. But big out to Tony's. They are amazing chocolate, great wrapping. I appreciate information on my wrapping and recyclable. What's better than reading when you're eating chocolate that's recyclable? Perfect. Nothing is the answer to that question. So we got ice then. So here's another one then. There's a couple of interesting things. So what would you be the god of? Obviously bubble tea. Next question.
Done.
Bubble tea and anti-Tories. No, let's not go down that road.
Yes, love it. But, done.
Well, what would you actually, if you were the god of something, and don't say like self-righteousness or something because that's lame, but I mean like not I don't mean you're self-righteous.
I meant like really sad.
I meant like don't be self adulating, don't be like, well, I'd be the god of morality. Oh god. No, I knew you wouldn't say that. I just want to get in there first before I want to say it before you said something.
I want to say something really wanky now.
the god of wanky comments.
What would I be the god of? I guess I'd be the goddess. No, fuck it, God.
Yeah, I didn't want to gender the deities. You're throwing that around.
Yeah, that's right. Take that back, Ria. What would I see? Now the thing is, I've obviously answered this because I asked the question. Now I can't remember. I imagine it changes on whatever the day is. Feeling quite feisty today, so maybe I tell you what I'd be the god of: stopping mediocre men failing upwards.
I thought you were going to say porn then.
I would be the god. Oh Christ! In fucking Indie Comic Spotlight, I'm talking about penises again. Why do I keep on talking about penises?
The phallic fallacy, I think. Is that the term?
I don't know what's wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with you. Talking about, I mean, I talk about penises quite a lot as well. I don't talk about vaginas that much. I talk about a lot of things.
There needs to be equality. I've talked about this before. There needs to be equality in seeing male and female, or even in between bodies, and there needs to be more penises. There just needs to be more.
Megan says that all the time.
Penises are normal, and it drives me fucking insane that you get to see everything of a woman's body in like adverts for shower gel. It's always a fucking woman, and you always get the side tit, and you never get like a man's butt or like. I mean, to be fair, I don't want to see a side view of a penis really, but maybe we should.
Megan's always like that. She's whenever we're watching something and there's a penis in that, she gets excited. Not in the sexual sense, and just like, oh my god, there's a willy on screen. And
yeah,
it's
we
like,
go penis and get really excited.
She's quite excited when I showed a Train Spot and get to see Ewan McGregor's wang in that. That was quite. I was like, watch out, this Megan. Yeah, I was like, watch out for it, Megan. You'll see it. She's like, see what? She's like, was that Ewan McGregor's willy? I was like, it was. It was one of the first willies I saw on screen. Funnily enough, puts me to shame every time. Yeah, I agree. I think there should be. I mean. You know, I don't really want to see penises, but I don't really want to see a lot of things. I mean, apart from seeing women's breasts, I don't really want to see nakedness in anything I watch. Like, I sound like such a prude, and I want to clarify, I do approve of porn. I may have watched it once or twice ever, but no, I know, sinning.
Oh my god, splashed on the headlines tomorrow.
I know, Mike Burton, podcaster, watches pornography. Gross. I think I spoke about it in like one of the first 50 podcasts I did actually, about, I think I spoke about porn, but like, I don't like watching people kiss. Like male, female.
The sound.
Like, like I'm not fussed about the gender. Like when I've been watching Schitt's Creek and there's lots of gay kissing in that, and that's two men kissing, and that's completely fine. I haven't got a problem with the fact it's two men. I just don't want to ever see anyone kiss on screen ever. The worst is when you kiss and they pull away and there's that little bit of spit.
I can't stand it.
And it's just like It's also like, I sound like a prude, but with sex scenes. Like, it's so rare to watch a film or a series, and a sex scene happens, and you need to see the whole thing.
Yeah, you never need to
see
it.
Like, if you're watching two people who've been, like, got this, like, sexual tension, and they've been, like, best friends for ages, and it's all building up and stuff, and then it bursts, and they make out, and then they start tearing each other's clothes off. Realistically, once they get on the bed, you can cut, and they can be afterwards and just hugging. I don't need to watch this weird, because I know it's not really happening. So I'm just watching these two actors just breathe on each other. So I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see that. I've seen porn and I've been involved in sex, I've had it at least once, So it's like, I vaguely know somewhat what I'm doing, I hope. But it's just like, I don't need to watch two people have this weird thing where I just see a bit of nipple every now and then, depending on how famous the actress is, because obviously they force young actresses like Emilia Clarke to get her chebs out. And then when they get famous enough and can say no to things, they don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, I don't need any of that. Yes, Emilia Clarke's a very attractive woman. Seeing her naked, I'm not going to say no, but it doesn't add anything to the plot necessarily. I mean, I think maybe the end of series 1 of Game of Thrones, when she'd had all her clothes burnt off and she was with the dragons, that thematically made sense. But I didn't need to see the front. You can kind of see, do you know what I mean? Like, I sound like a prude.
Right. I know what you mean. Like, I'm not against nudity at all.
No.
I think it's fine. And especially in any sort of media or art or anything like that, as long as it's all consensual and safe, and there's this wonderful thing that's happening at the moment when we've got intimacy directors on film and TV sets, and I think that's really important and a huge step for everybody to feel safe, the actors, the people around the actors, for young people on sets to see that it can be a safe environment. All of these sort of things is really important, but at the same time, I think we very rarely need a sex scene. I can't think of currently any sex scene in a film that's not like 9.5 Weeks or Basic Instinct or whatever, when it's actually all about sex.
Yeah,
that it needs to be there, and I very rarely, when a sex scene is there, I don't mind it, like whatever. I'm quite up for watching hot people bang. Like, who isn't? Just as you said,
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm rewatching The Walking Dead at the moment, and I know I really shouldn't, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan is so fucking hot. And I'm like, I know he's Negan, so he's terrible, but hot. And I'm just like, you know, I'm okay with the fact I'm happy looking, you know, objectifying a man on screen. I probably shouldn't, because I get annoyed when men objectify women on screen, but whatever, I'm going to objectify. So, you know, I'm clearly in the realm of I like seeing hot people. That's cool. But yeah, with sex scenes, I think they're very rarely needed. They don't add anything to the story. You can, through acting, you can understand that people have a sexual relationship or they have had sex. You don't need to see it. And I also think they're very rarely shot with anything other than a male gaze. And that's where it's so problematic. I think even if we've got more female directors and things like that, you know, who are doing sex scenes, and I think that's great. I think that the medium of film and TV, we're so used to seeing things through a male gaze that we automatically recreate it. It's almost like an unconscious bias of how we view sex scenes. And so I just think, why are they there? There's the film, is it the most, with Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, is it the most violent year? No, I'm mixing two titles.
I mean, I love both of those actors, and Oscar Isaac's one of my favourite people on the planet. But
he's so amazing. But they're so, oh god, it's going to drive me mad. Maybe it is called that. Anyway, so they play a couple, and sort of like she's the daughter of some sort of mobster, and he's married into the family. And in that film, you, through the skill of their acting, you 100% understand their relationship. You understand when they've had sex, when they haven't had sex, or, you know, if they're going through a dry patch. I hate that saying, it's disgusting. And I actually think it's because it's specifically against women when you say dry patch, because obviously it's about dry vaginas. And you understand everything about their relationship, like when he desires her, when she wants to use her body or her sexuality as a power tool that's not the right thing, as a power struggle in their relationship, without seeing them banging all the way through the film. So it can be done.
Yeah.
And you've got to trust that your audiences will understand that and understand human relationships, because funnily enough, we're all in them, we've all seen them. You don't have to show people, like you said, just breathing on each other. It seems weird when you think about them.
It is, and I just looked it up. That's what I was on my phone for, and it is called A Most Violent Year. I've not seen it.
Oh, yes.
So.
It's so good. So I used to have incredible knowledge of films, and when films, like the exact year that they came out, every single actor in them, what it was called, who it's directed by, who fucking edited it, who was the cinematographer. And then I had a baby 3 years ago, and I can't fucking remember anything. It drives me nuts.
I've heard of baby brain. A friend of mine recently had a kid, and she was like, "Been looking stuff up. Apparently, your vision gets worse. It's here, and then it gets way worse, and then it gets a bit better, but never goes to the way it was before you had the kid." And then that just keeps happening. Every kid you have, your vision just gets worse. There's certain senses of yours that get heightened and then get way worse. There's elements of your brain. And she's like, yeah, getting pregnant. There's all these things that suck about it. Because have you heard about teeth? No.
So what they used to do, like less than 100 years ago, because when you get pregnant, basically everything in your body all loosens up and you go all loosey-goosey, including your teeth in your gums can loosen up. So what they used to do to pregnant women is they used to pull out all their teeth. And this is like less than 100 years ago, because women's mouths would hurt, their teeth would hurt, because everything's just all fucked up. So they go, rather than actually just like treat you like an actual human being, we'll just treat you like an animal and we'll pull all your teeth out. And so loads of women just have dentures just because they'd had a baby. I
did not know that. That's fucked up. But I don't...
Isn't it?
But the thing that... I think the thing that made me realise how fucked up the world is, obviously we spoke very early on in this show about the Holocaust, which is a big one. But the thing that screwed me out the most, I think, was when I found out that in England, homosexuality was illegal until like the 70s. And I was like, I'm sorry. You're telling me my parents were alive when homosexuality... There was a time in Britain when it wasn't legal and people get put in prison. And I'm like... And when I remember being told this, it was not... I think it's probably about 10 years ago now. And I was just like, no, that can't be right. And I looked up and I was like, what? I was like, that's not that far. Like, you know, you could argue, you know, Holocaust atrocity and all this sort of things. But there was like... decades of things building up to the power struggle complexes and the way the whole country works and all these sorts of big things that kind of don't make it, like as we discussed in Mouse, it doesn't make it okay by any stretch of the imagination, but you can kind of, from a historical perspective, understand how a situation could get to that point. But then you look at Britain and you go, oh yeah, being gay was legal. There's no explanation. There's no reason you can give me that makes sense of that apart from religious bigotry. So it's just like, so when you say things like that, if you told me that before I heard about the being gay was illegal in the UK, I'd be like, skeptical. And then now in this day and age, I'm like, you can tell me fucking anything, I'd probably believe it. Like, I don't believe everything I hear on the internet, but when it's like, oh, humans have done these horrible things, do you want to hear about it? It probably happened. I've been to a lot of museums in my time, and I don't really get surprised by how awful people are anymore, and how stupidity mixed with bigotry just seems to fuel centuries, if not millennia, of just practices, which is so sad. Shit. It is. It is. I was going to say with the thing about God, because I was trying to think of what I would be the god of. And one of them's the god of smirking, I think. Nice. When I smile, I smirk a lot, and if I take photos and stuff, so that would probably be one. And then the god of rambling. So I think that I could legitimately, like I do my podcast, my Star Wars podcast is literally just me doing that for an hour by myself. And there's been, like, I've recorded audio adverts for my own shows and things, and I've sent like copies to Dave, and I'm like, I need you to cut some of this shit out, because I've recorded like 4 minutes of me trying to record a 30-second trailer, and I'm listening to this and I don't want to listen to the podcast, and I fucking make it. Help me. So I think smirking and rambling, I think that's the two things for me.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and self-deprecating humour. I'm not the god of that though. There's plenty of comedians that are far better at that than I am. I'm not. You know, I used to think I was funny, and then I met actual funny people, and I'm like, no, I say occasional funny things. I'm not funny. That was quite a big realization.
No, I disagree. I think you can say you're funny.
You don't spend enough time with me. With the camera on, it gives me the extroversion spotlight, so I get like energized by it somewhat and performing in essence. I'm still the same person, but like with Megan, like me and Meg make each other laugh a lot. But when I'm surrounded by my friends, it depends on the numbers, because I used to love being the center of attention, and I try to now act like I don't, even though I do. I don't want to like it, but unfortunately I do. So I have to try and balance it.
That's fine.
Somewhat. I used to be a fucking egomaniac, but like the thing is that I have to try and balance myself out quite a lot about certain things. And when it comes to groups of people, it's like if there's me and like 4 people, I'm fairly funny at times. When you get to like up to 10, I can be hilarious. But then 12 or 13, no. But you get to like 20 and I can really do it. So it's these random numbers that I'm throwing at you for no reason, of just being like, sometimes I can really get the nail on the head and I can be funny all night and make loads of people crack up and hit everything perfectly. Other times, same group of people with like 3 less people, nothing lands and I'm not funny at all. So I don't think I'm a funny person. I think I occasionally say funny things, really. But yeah, I mean, it's getting late-ish now. It's getting late, and it's past your bedtime.
Yeah, it's way past. Yeah. Well, you know, it's like bed at 10, read Reddit for half an hour, and go to sleep.
You're one of the few people I know who use Reddit. I love Reddit.
Really?
Me and a lot of my friends use Reddit, but that stemmed from my mate Reese using it and then him telling us, and I was like, I heard of Reddit, but I've not ever tried it, because for a while the mobile apps were just terrible for years.
Really bad.
And then there was Alien Blue, which was not even made by the people who made Reddit, and it was the user interface of Reddit desktop still looks like you've gone on a website that looks like it's been hacked.
I know, it's
so
dog
good. Shit.
You go on it and it's like the first websites. I mean, I'm a bit older than you, so it might be a bit different, but like the first websites you used to go on when you had your little buzzy little modem going
a dial-up connection.
Yeah,
I remember those days.
Be like, come on, guys, you've got to do something about that.
Yeah, and they still haven't really. There's certain subreddits they make things cleaner, but I only go on Reddit on my phone now, because if I go on the website, it just upsets me. It's just sad to look at. But I was going to say as well, one thing I love reminiscing with people about, because I'm so old and so mature, is one things are, I'm sure when your kid grows up, especially won't understand, but when I eventually have kids and they grow up, they're not going to understand that not only did you have dial-up connection, but also if you got a phone call while on the internet, it turned off the internet. And people are like, but I've got internet on my phone. It's like, no, they were two separate things, but there was one line that had both going in, and you could only use one at a time. Yeah, and then you hear the phone ringing when you're on the internet. It's like, no, and then it's already gone. By the time you can hear it ringing, you're already offline. So you're screwed. But reminiscing, it's fun. It's the joy. So I'm in that nice little sweet spot where I've got older brothers. One's 17 years older than me, and one's like 21 years older than me. So I've got a nice little sweet spot of I'm kind of, not only am I a right tail end millennial where I've got enough of the depression from all other millennials, but also I've got enough, like a hint of I think it's Gen X after our generation. Yeah. So I was like, I remember the internet becoming a thing when I was not becoming a thing, but being a lot more widespread as I kind of entered college. That's when smartphones started to be a thing. So I remember the before times and still being young with them existing. And, our kids and that stuff won't have any idea that you had to even wait for TV programs.
I know. Aren't they so lucky?
Bastards. Absolute bastards. Being able to just, not have to wait for... I think music's the big one for me. I know Spotify is probably evil, not paying anyone any money, but it's like, I only have to pay, like, on a plan with someone else, £5 a month to have 99.9% of all music I ever want to listen to, like that. When it used to be £8 minimum, normally 10 or 12 per one CD, and you could buy it and it could suck.
Yeah, we were talking about this literally today, doing washing up. Exciting times, because our niece is really into heavy metal, into music that Kevin likes, and I mean her constant refrain is, it's not aggressive enough. Whenever he does any recommendations, it needs to be more aggressive. But we were saying, about 4 years ago, she was listening to, I don't know, like Kiss FM and stuff like that. But that's because that's what her mum listened to, because it was everything when you're that age is controlled by your parents. And then you suddenly get your own phone and you suddenly have access to music and to YouTube. You have your own money, but also things are free-ish now, or at least cheap, that, if you're 16, you're happy to pay £5 to have every song in the world on your phone, right? So you can suddenly start developing your own tastes. And isn't that mad? And I feel like I wasn't able to do that for a really long time. Not necessarily in a bad, like I'm not being critical of anybody who had any musical influence over me, but it's exactly like you said. I had to go to HMV and look at what money I had and go, okay, I guess I kind of like that, or I heard that on MTV or whatever. And that's how I found new music. And for young people today, it's fucking amazing.
Oh, it's so good.
There's this whole world that's open to them. And that's one of the reasons why the internet's amazing, right? Because there's there's the terrible parts of it, but let's end on a positive note. There's these, amazing adventures. There's these amazing discoveries that people can find, and especially young people. Just imagine you're just thinking your whole life, you just have music.
Oh, I know. And nearly unlimited music as well. And just anywhere you go, you don't have to, I used to carry a CD player to school. And, if you try like a little Walkman, and I was just like, if you jump while having this, it would not only potentially stop the music working, you could potentially break both the disc and the player. If you drop that, you could destroy an album forever. And it's like nowadays, like, you got your phone in the case, you might drop your phone, but you can still listen to your Spotify account. Saves everything, so it doesn't matter. I don't know what, as you know, my music taste is already very eclectic as it is, loving listening to death metal in one moment, and then shoegaze, and then classical music, and then Sia and pop music. So I'm already like that. And I had influences from here, there, and everywhere, from brothers to friends to etc. Like my dad loved classical music, but he also loved a lot of progressive stuff, but he also loved Genesis and Peter Gabriel. Well, Peter Gabriel's part of Genesis, but and Bob Dylan, David Bowie, all these sorts of things. And my mum just liked not great pop music and modern R&B, not the cool old R&B, the new stuff that I don't like very much. But I got this, so I could just hear almost everything. And my brothers liked a bit of heavy metal, but they were not my mum's sons. They were just my dad's. So they never lived with me. So I just saw them occasionally. So there's all this influence, and I've got the mad music taste. I'm just like, me and Megan, this would be probably my final thought. When me and Megan, we joke about when we have kids and stuff, and we said we're probably going to have two if we can, and blah. We're currently living in a flat. We're going to buy a house hopefully next year, and then we'll chill for a couple of years, and then probably go down that road if it goes to plan, in air quotes. But happy little accidents can happen sometimes. But with those sort of things, we've joked that we'd have two kids, and what will probably happen is we'd have a girl and a boy. But the girl would love Star Wars and death metal and all that sort of stuff. And the boy would love Harry Potter, which is what Megan loves. And then, they would love playing music, but isn't as into hearing it, which is what Megan's like. Because Megan can play banjo, ukulele, piano / keyboard, guitar.
That's amazing.
Saxophone as well.
What?
Yeah, I know. She also played steel pan. She was in a steel pan band for a while as well. So she's incredible, but she is not into music even a quarter as much as I am. She could probably listen to the artists she's listened to up to this point in her life. She could listen to those artists with no new music for the rest of her life.
That's me. Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
I can't. That drives me mental. Like, I love listening to old music I liked 15 years ago. I still like. There's almost no music that I stop liking. I just kind of gone, yeah, I've played that to death. Yeah, I listened to that for 8 years. Maybe I can take a break from the first Slipknot album, and then once a year I'll come back around, I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to listen to that again. But yeah, we joke about that. So it's just fun things like that of just different people, how one would expect Megan to be the musical one, because I can just I can play a bit of keyboard and that's about it. But it's just weird how people work out. And it's one of the fun things about this conversation, especially where we just kind of got into, I keep using the word minutia to act like my vocabulary is so wide, but it's
so clever.
I know the word minutia. Can you spell it? Maybe not. Don't ask me. I'll try and put it in the show notes, see if I know how to spell it. But
it's what spell check's for, it's fine.
Yeah, it's what Google's for, That's,
oh my God.
Most of the time I'm like, is this word spelt this way? And then it's just quick, open a tab on Google, type it in. Do you mean this? Yeah, close it before. Don't even search the results. There's no evidence I searched for it, just what it came up. Oh yeah, it had an extra E in it, didn't it? Oh, Mike, you're really good at spelling. Yes.
Thank you, Senior Google.
But this has been an absolutely incredible conversation. And, we've got so many other notes that we could probably talk forever. So maybe we will. Quick, let's keep going.
Yeah.
No. But unfortunately, we have to sleep and have day jobs and other things of interest to spend our time with. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. It has been delightful getting to know you properly, and I'm sure my listeners will love it as well. Please plug any of the social media handles. I'm going to include the Ria's questions in the show notes.
Do it.
So people can experience that. And then you're going to have to pressure Kevin to put more content on there.
I will do. So, I'm going to, straight after this, he's probably getting ready for bed and I'll be like, no, come on. What's some amazing questions I've asked recently?
Or just note some down yourself. Maybe when you're just by yourself, just do a voice memo. It's like,
Well, that's not a bad idea.
What's my favourite bear-shaped foot? What's my favourite animal crisp?
What is my favourite animal crisp? Not pom bears. I don't like pom bears because we went to see Moonlight at the Curzon in Aldgate. And Moonlight is a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, please see it. But I apologise because you will cry. And there was 2 people in the cinema and they were sat near us. It's a lovely cinema, fancy cinema. They brought all their own food in, including fucking pom bears, the noisiest crisp that's ever been created. Before this, I liked pom bears. And they sat, and it was a multi-pack through the whole film, eating fucking pom bears. So now I can't stand them. MJ had some at the weekend because we went to a garden centre because I'm weird and middle class.
Megan loves garden centres.
I mean, it was amazing. It was magical. Kevin hates it when I say magical, but it was actually magical. And she got she had a little kiddie lunch pack thing that had some pom bears in it. I had to just be really fucking fine, you can have the pom bears. Anyway, we're supposed to be wrapping this up.
I genuinely, I would have asked that question even earlier if I knew I'd hear that story. What a delightful way to end this. So tell everyone where people can find you on any of the social media places and your shows. I've got them written down, so if you forget any, I'll put them in the show notes. It's your time to shine.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me on. This has been really fun. I apologise for any of the random... No, I don't apologise. I'm going to own my space. I said lots of amazing things. I'm sure they were very insightful. And we're going to put them all on some T-shirts.
Yep.
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Ria Carrogan, RiaCarrogan. And also, so I started doing Indie Comic Spotlight with Tony, which is wonderful. We've just recorded our first one, which was Pretty Deadly, which is a really fucked up book, but read it. It's great. I'll be popping up on Season's Greetings occasionally as well, so come and see me there. I'm hoping to start something called Femme on Film, which is going to be part of Comics in Motion, where I'm going to be talking about films that are female-led, which I think are unfairly maligned, mostly because male reviewers suck balls. So Tony and I are going to start with Josie and the Pussycats, which is a modern classic. Thank you very much. And then I'm hopefully going to talk to Tonya about Grease 2 as well. But we're all trying to find time in our schedule, so it's probably a random plug, so it won't happen till like December or something mad. I think that's it. I think that's the places you can... Pop Gorillas. Can't forget Pop Gorillas. So Jack, Tony and I are doing Pop Gorillas, where we do spoiler-free reviews, which I really struggle with, in the amount of time it takes to do a song or less. So go look us up on there. We're doing some fun stuff. We're going to do some stuff for Halloween, which is literally we're all watching all of the Halloween films, which is going to be an experience. I'm starting it on Friday, so wish me luck. And then we're going to review them. So I'm basically just being everywhere at the moment because I love chatting, as you can hear.
That's it. That's what you need. That's why you're on this show as well, to spread the Ria around. Yeah. I also did listen to on the car. I listened to because the Pop Gorilla episodes, they're released obviously like one-offs, but also you do little collections of them. So I just listened to like whole collections. I love the Ted Lasso one because it was like 30 seconds or something. You just said it's fucking amazing. You need to go watch it, and if you're not, you're wrong or something. And that was it. And that was the whole thing. And I was like, I haven't seen Ted Lasso. I've heard great things. But I was like,
I watch it.
Well, the thing is,
I wrote all these notes and I was like, fuck it, I don't have time. It's supposed to be short. It's amazing. Just watch it. Just feel some joy in your life. Yeah. Just bring some joy into your life. And
it cracked me up. It was really fun. And I really like that because, as you said, they're so short and they're all spoiler free. So it's like, even my biggest issue when I listen to like movie review podcasts or even Indie Comic Spotlight, sometimes it's like I want to have consumed the content before checking it out. I know Tony does Hidden Gems now, which is specifically spoiler free to try and convince people to listen to check out the comics, which is fine. But like a lot of the time, it's like, oh, I do want to read that at some point. I don't want to listen to people like there's the Superheroes to Dummies, for example. They did the Sandman episode, and I haven't read Sandman, so it's like I don't want to listen exactly. And I mean to because book club, but it's like I will at some point. It's on my eternal list along with Swamp Thing and a few other things. But it's like I don't want to listen to people talk about something for an hour or two if I haven't seen it. But Pop Gorilla is like couple minutes. It's a length of a song, if not shorter, and also spoiler free. So they're genius. I recommend people. Also, if people notice me, I was playing around with my water. I've been drinking my water this evening, and I've been thinking, I feel like there's something in there, but I keep looking and there's not. Oh, there is. There's a fly. It's been in my water this whole time. I didn't eat it. You're
going to turn into the fly. You're going to turn into Jeff Goldblum.
I mean, it depends.
That's how it works.
Well, that wouldn't be too bad. I mean, he is a sex god.
I mean, just in general, he is a sex god, isn't he?
What a man.
We watched The Fly recently. Oh my God. We're wrapping up. We watched The Fly recently. Kevin had never seen it before. And he just turned to me. He was just like, what is it about him? And I was like, I don't know.
I think Jurassic Park started it when he's just kind of got the open sort of trench coaty thing.
It's charisma. He's just got charisma, and he's gotten more the older he's gotten. He's very confident in himself.
He's very refined. I feel like he would be the kind of guy that if you had a party, he would genuinely he would kind of have that kind of spirit of like, I want to take my clothes off, but I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. So he'd go around the party and check them. By the way, I may be taking my clothes off. Is that going to be okay with all of you? And everyone would be like, of course. And he'd just check, right, is everyone okay? Just before, I'm going to take my clothes off now. I want to clarify, is everyone okay with this? Okay. And he would take it off and everyone would just be in awe of him. And that would just be, and I'd be fine, naked Jeff Goldblum walking around, you know.
I'd be all right with that.
I'd probably slap his ass when he walks past and be like, do you know what I did? I'll tell everyone. I'd be like, I slapped Jeff Goldblum's ass. Can you imagine? Oh.
But if you've done it without his consent, that's sexual assault. So do you want to be the person who sexually assaulted him?
Yes, I will. I'll put my hand up and say, I will be the man. We'll get that on a t-shirt. I'm happy to be the man. Or I'm happy to be the person to sexually assault Jeff Goldblum. To be fair, if he came around and asked me, you know, are you okay at this party? Because I'm invited to these sort of Hollywood parties.
Obviously.
If he said, you know, would you be okay with me being naked? I'd say, only if I'm allowed to slap your bum once and not too painfully.
Question, yes. Are you going to slap it or are you going to cup it?
No, I would do a nice slap, like a playful slap. Like not a proper like a whip and it leaves a mark slap. I don't want to squeeze his bum necessarily. Like clothed, a little squidge, that's okay. Not in general. I'm not trying to validate sexual harassment. I'm talking about with Jeff Goldblum. A little squeeze.
With his consent.
Yeah. If he's consenting, if he's not going to do anything, it would either be clothed, a little squeeze, or naked, a little slap. That would be where I'd want to go.
I think I'm with you. Naked slap.
Yeah. It's the little noise as well that you got to do with it.
Because I bet he's got a tight butt. Anyway.
Tight cheeks, yeah. Tight man, tight cheeks. And that's where we're going to end it with Jeff Goldblum. Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Ria. It's been so delightful having you on, and we'll definitely organise, more podcasts for you to come on, and
Yes.
I'll get you to collaborate with everyone. I'll get Megan on. You can meet her, and it will be delightful.
Woo-hoo! That sounds fantastic. Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm going to end the Zoom call here.